light and dark is so very thin.
I am God! And I have become legend.
And welcome back, Guardians, to episode 14 of Becoming Legend.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back. Welcome back. Hope you guys had a great holiday weekend. I know I did.
Oh, yeah. Had a great
Yeah.
one. Explosions
Oh, yeah.
in the sky. The darkness
Exactly.
tried to contact me, but wasn't successful.
Exactly.
But yes, it is episode 14. We are at the end of Season of the Splicer. The last few episodes, if you're
Yep.
just tuning in, have been about the Season of the Splicer, this current season of Destiny. We figured out who the big bad is. We figured out what the big threat of the season was, the endless night. We figured out a way to end that, and we'll be discussing that during this episode.
Mm-hmm.
So, first, I'm going to go ahead and drop the name of the big baddie. It took us 7 weeks to figure it out because they did a really good job keeping it a mystery this time. You know, in the previous season, they even told us in the trailer who the big bad was. It was going to be the Empress Keitel of the Cabal. Whereas here, they really didn't tell us at all. You had to really pay attention and go through all of your weekly missions and spend time unlocking the lore, reading stories, listening to conversations between characters. But the reveal was it was Quria Blade Transform all along. All
The
along.
corrupted mind.
The corrupted and dreaming mind, absolutely. Mr. Tweezy, would you like to tell us just a little bit about Quria? What's a Quria and why should we care?
Quria is a special subclass, like a higher tiered Vex that the Vex pretty much send in to solve complex situations. Originally, Quoria's origin story is that if you remember back from some of the first episodes that we talked about when we were talking about the Hive and we talked a little bit about Crota, Crota, and trying to be like his sisters and become as powerful as his sisters were, because his twin sisters were like, I want to say they were both death singers, or just very, they were the favorites. Crota was not. In an effort to try and become more like his sisters, he cut a hole in the realm of space. But when he did that, he accidentally opened a portal to the Vex world that allowed for the Vex to cross over into Oryx's throne world, into the Ascendant Plane, right? And when the Vex came in and they started fighting with the Hive, they realized that this was a foe that it had never faced before, and so there was pretty much a stalemate that went on for years and years and years, while just Hive forces and Vex forces couldn't really find the upper hand in how to fight against each other. The Vex couldn't really deal with the sword logic and couldn't understand where power was generating from in the Hive world. And when the Hive left and went to the Vex world, they weren't able to gain as much power, and so they were just easily defeated by the Vex. Quria was created to try and understand the Ascendant realm, to understand Oryx's throne world, to better be able to simulate it, and better be able to have the Vex, defeat them. Because ultimately, the Vex's end goal, from what we understand, is just to be the last one standing. Like their goal is to annihilate everything else that stands in their way, so that they will be the last beings remaining. So Quria had a brilliant strategy and ended up, really analyzing the throne world and began to understand the sword logic and began to understand that, the more that you kill, the more power you have. And so over the course of thousands of years, was just trying different ways in which to have the Vex come out on top. They would have the Vex sent in. They would have the Vex kind of fuse with a worm, which was always interesting, because we know when the Vex and when when the hive fused with the worm, specifically Crota, ended up with Crota, Ziva and Savathuun, we see what happens there. But Quria at that time, being full Vex, was able to understand that allowing that kind of worm into your body was a parasitic relationship. It was going to continue to leech off of you, no matter how much you killed or how much you conquered. It would always be hungrier and hungrier, and you would have to continue to feed it in order to survive. So Corey was able to understand a large amount of the hive. They were, it was trying to work on positioning the Vex to become more of like a god. And it wasn't until one of the worm gods, went over to Crota and was like, hey, or not Crota, he went over to Oryx and was like, hey, you need to go take care of your stuff in your Ascendant realm because these Vex are wiping your people out. Like, this is a problem. Like, we're not generating power anymore because we're not being fed. This isn't working. You need to go and solve this. So what does Oryx do? He solves it. He goes back. He does two main things. In order to win the battle against the Vex, he turned some of the Vex into Taken Vex and forced them to fight against each other. And this was an enemy that Quria had never seen before. So Quria couldn't anticipate. Quria couldn't simulate how to beat these enemies. And so it ended up leading to more and more defeat. Ultimately Oryx banishes Crota to a Vex world. He seals him away and banishes him off for all of his actions. This is something that makes him, as we talked about in episodes past, this is the catalyst that caused him to see the weaknesses that existed in his Ascendant realm where it was and move his Ascendant realm and his throne world to the Dreadnought, something that he can take with him and travel with. And the last thing is that he was able to convert Quria into the Taken. But I remember reading Quria for a little bit of time was able to retain its will. Like, it was taken, but it was able to retain its will. And later, as a gift, was given by Oryx to Savathuun, who I believe, being the god of trickery, was able to eventually subvert, Quoria's will and get Quria to succumb to whatever it is that Savathuun wanted.
Right.
And that leads us to now, I think.
Yes.
Give or take.
Yes, absolutely. And so Quria has been with us throughout this entire journey of this story that we call Destiny. Through in the background, he has not been a core enemy, or he has not been present in the story to the point where we can see the effects of what's going on. But we are learning about the catalysts, as you said, of things that have happened previously. And even just in this was a real streamlined version of the Quria of sorry. This was a streamlined version of the history of Quria. But in that, I did want to take two parts that you said, because there are additional catalysts that came from what happened in the past. One of them being, like you said, was Corey was able to get a hold of a worm larvae, a little baby worm, and study it, completely understand that worshiping this larvae produces power. And that's something that the Vex had never come upon before. That's why they couldn't really understand the sword logic, because it's really it's kind of sort of like a religion if you break it down. And the Vex are a computer species, basically. A computer, 1001, positive, negative. There is no gray in between. There's only, destroy or create more Vex. That's it. Those are the only two things. They didn't understand the fact that you can worship something and that gives you power. What Quria learned from this and actually passed down to future generations of Vex, as you see in Destiny 1, the Vex who worship the darkness in the Black Garden, that behavior was learned from that initial battle between Oryx and Quria. The Vex had never encountered anything like that before, and because of that, they are actually now different factions of Vex. Basically, Quria sent down commands to different Vex minds, and some of them actually would worship the Vex in order to gain power, in order to cause a dark future, whereas some other Vex minds would just continue to, transform their own way. Um, Another thing that came from that, as you said, when Crota was cast into the Vex world, this was really the first time that these two superpowers in the universe have come face to face with each other. This battle that they had wasn't something that happened in a few hours or it was real quick. Like, this was a huge war that lasted, from my understanding, was at least a few months. Was just constant engagement of Vex versus Hive. They cannot cross the barriers of reality. The Hive can only exist in their ascendant plane, and the Vex can only exist in their planet, as you stated before. And they're going at it for months, and only at the end, whenever, as you stated, Oryx's Oryx's worm says, "Hey, we've had enough of this. Like, you need to cut this out right now." And with the assistance of Oryx's daughters, was able to repel the Vex and take them and take Queria's mind. Now, as a result of this, we killed Oryx. There's no one really else to take the taken throne. We did not gain that position of power that we were supposed to whenever we killed Oryx, and therefore we left the seat of power open for Savathuun, who has now come in and is using the tools that Oryx provided in order to further this plan of the darkness. Or we're not even entirely sure what their exact plan is, but it's definitely working because it's affecting the Guardians. We now have taken blights in the tower. You've never seen that before. That's absolutely terrifying in itself. The fact that they're so close to the Traveler and like that they can even exist in that space is really something. So I sorry, I kind of was a long-winded answer of saying the same thing that you just did, but like this for the listeners, like we have come across something that's been influencing us for centuries, and now we finally had the chance to interact with it face to face. And what I'm personally kind of wondering is what are going to be the repercussions now that we've faced Quria. Spoiler alert, if you have not done the season 8 mission, they give us your season 8 weekly missions. You get 2 new expunge missions. One is just like the other 2 where you go in and do your weekly maze run and kill a boss at the end. And at the second one, you actually come face to face with Quria itself. And it's a pretty fun battle. I'm not going to spoil anything. Like, enjoy it for yourself or watch the YouTube video. I really enjoyed it. But my question is, what are the repercussions going to be now that we've taken out Quria Blade Transform? And how likely is it that Savathuun has already put a plan in place where we're going to cause whatever the next threat is?
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's a good question. There's a couple things that the community at large has been theorizing. And I can talk about like the story behind it, and then if we want to, we can also talk a little bit about like from a development side, maybe why these decisions are the ones that people are talking about. So the biggest thing that people are thinking about is that there is going to be some change to the Dreaming City, if not next season, come the release of the Witch Queen. Because when the Guardians killed Riven, it set in motion a curse. And that curse repeats every 3 weeks, in case you guys are wondering why week to week is a little bit different, why week to week there might be a little bit more enemies of a taken variety. They have a 3-week cycle curse that just continuously gets put on repeat, right? And the big theory that players have had is that, well, once we take care of Quria, then we should break the curse, and theoretically we won't have to deal with any of this anymore. So that's story-wise what people are thinking, is that we are going to see some change to the Dreaming City where the curse is going to be lifted. This also would lead us potentially, like, imagine the curse being lifted being the thing that, Mara, Princess Mara or Queen Mara has said that she will be returning soon. And maybe the reason why she can't return is because of the curse that has been put in place. So maybe that will be solved. From a dev perspective, from like an actual development perspective, we do know that a lot of the old planets have been cycled out to make room for new planets because they don't want the game to get bloated. Also, some of these older planets don't really align with the engine changes that have been made, with the lighting changes that have been made. Similar to how we saw Mars disappear, similar to how we saw uh, half of the planets disappear in like 3/4 of our PvP maps, and
Titan, Mary.
all of our Gambit maps, and just so many things. Similar to how we saw all that disappear, a lot of people are thinking that maybe with this we are going to see the Dreaming City disappear next, by the time they release the next expansion, to kind of either to take a look at the inside, take a look at the code, and kind of clean up some stuff, maybe make it a little bit better for them to bring back, or just to completely remove off the map, because our mission will have been done there. We don't know yet, but like that's kind of like one of the biggest repercussions that we think we're going to see from this, is that, hey, the curse will be lifted. We will finally be able to go about hanging out on the Dreaming City without having to worry about why there's so many taken all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, that's something I would
Yeah.
definitely be looking forward to seeing, is how the Dreaming City will look after the curse is removed. Will it either be
Exactly.
maybe completely back to peaceful and no enemies at all and just great, or
Yeah.
B, perhaps there were further stages of the curse that we had yet to see because it was on a 3-week cycle. Literally, Savathuun set that 3-week cycle so she can milk those deaths for her murder battery. As we said in the previous episode, murder battery is a super weapon that absorbs all the death within a certain time space, a certain
Hmm.
that's literally it. I'm sorry, there's no better way to explain it. There's literally
Yeah.
a curse around this entire segment of this planet, and every 3 weeks, every time we kill someone, she's actually getting power from that. She being Savathuun. So will she still will this murder weapon be completed with the removal of the curse, and could we see, further effect of that?
Yeah.
Which, like you stated, would be a perfect reason for Marasov to return, to stave
Hmm.
off the new threat, which could be something that could potentially destroy the Dreaming City, which would go into play, as you said, if they remove the Dreaming City in order to add in new locations come next expansion. That would be a perfect last hurrah. It'd be something be interesting to see, and
Yeah.
but only time will tell.
Only time will tell, unfortunately. But also, and I'm curious what your thoughts are. Obviously, we've said Osiris is sus. And I think that the internet agrees with us. We weren't the first to come to that conclusion. I think we all came to that conclusion collectively at the same times. But other than Osiris being very suspicious, I am excited to see, you know, even though the Endless Night theoretically is going to be taken down, we've defeated Quria. We will no longer be in the Vex simulation in the tower. Lines have been drawn in the city itself, and not just between like Vanguard members, but also between the citizens of the city and the Vanguard itself.
That's right.
So I'm curious, and to pick your brain about this. What do you think is going to happen with the story as we know it so far moving forward? If that was a sentence.
I think we're going to continue to see a rift between the Vanguard and quote the city and quote city self-announced city leaders. Let's say,
Yeah.
because we've already seen the effects of Lakshmi's podcast, who is doing she's doing great. She's on like episode 8, and million followers strong, and
Apparently.
on top of that, even the fact that we're seeing civilians in the city sing Savathuun's song is what drives me to believe that we're going to see a greater rift. Even if the Vanguard gets their S together and they finally promote a new Hunter Vanguard, great, it's Crow, we knew it all along, and they everything goes back to some semblance of normal. There's already those who have been if not corrupted, are already hearing the whispers in their ears and are already facing questionable decisions about morality and how they feel that the city should be led. You know, we, as let's just say, for example, we as regular civilians, we're not light bearers. We just live here and pay taxes. And you know, like 4 years ago, our leader got murdered in the Red War. They never replaced him, so they put these three military commanders in charge of us. One of them died. They never replaced him, so now there's just two handling everything about the city. You know, not just preventing it from war, but also food, water, where people are allowed to live. They just let our enemies of all time just in our backyard, those fallen who killed, man, my grandfather was killed by a fallen. You're gonna let them live in here with us? So I think it's those type of people and that kind of mentality that you'll never fully be able to quell. And right now the Vanguard's not even in a position to give, you know, a rightful answer of, hey, we should do this and why. So again, sorry y'all for the long-winded answers, but that's exactly what I think is going on. People are already starting to side with Lakshmi and the idea that perhaps the Vanguard should be overthrown since they clearly cannot elect someone who can get the job done.
Yeah.
Now, how is that going to manifest itself? Who knows? Osiris is already acting strange enough as it is. I would not be surprised if more of our favorite NPCs start to show signs of corruption or change of heart or influence in future seasons.
Yeah, I'm curious because we know that also Savathuun's song, as you mentioned, it has spread to everyone. You hear Saint 14 talking about how he was so happy to hear children sing this song, and he sang the words, and the words were different, but the tone was Savathuun's song. You know, you run into Crow, and every now and then you just hear him whistling Savathuun's song, and it's the song that he's heard out in the city. You know, you've heard it from pretty much everybody that this song is being heard. And then that, you know, we talked about that lore book a couple weeks ago where, sorry for the yawn. Oh goodness. We talked about that lore book a couple of weeks ago where Savathuun, or it appears as if Savathuun has taken form inside the city, is walking around the city and interacting with its civilians. We don't know if we don't know who Savathuun is. We don't know if Savathuun is going to stay in the city. You know, I like the theory that Savathuun is Osiris right now. You know, it's super sus. Because there's some things that get said where you're just like, you know, that's gotta question that. But the other thing that I think is interesting, and as you've alluded, it is not just that Lakshmi is speaking out, but Lakshmi, you know, the Future War Cult and New Monarchy have pretty much formed together to pretty much overthrow the Vanguard. You know, Dead Orbit is not about it. That's not what they're about anyways, is any sort of change. So we don't really consider Dead Orbit to be part of this coup attempt, but that is what this is. To, you know, for lack of a better word, they see us as being too weak on our enemies. We had the ability to kill Kyle, and we didn't. You know, we had that ability, we had the opportunity, and we saved her. We didn't kill her. You know, especially after she attacks Zavala. Like, you know, from the city's perspective, we're justified. We should have taken care of them, and we didn't. And now, Mithrax, the House of Light, even though they're fallen that say that they are, you know, trying to do their best for the traveler and trying to help spread the light and do good, they're still fallen. And, you know, you can talk about the story that they tell about the saint, and that beautiful small piece of a cutscene that we got earlier this year about how, hey, you know, fallen aren't the only ones with monsters from the wars. Like, you know, like fallen aren't the only monsters. You guys did some horrible things as well. And not just that, like there's moments where I think Mithrax and Shax talk to each other about some of the atrocities of war that they themselves have done, you know, or where they made decisions that stuck with them for the rest of their lives, but they can't do anything about it because the decision's already been made and lives have already been lost. So I'm just curious moving forward how this alliance is going to work. Right now, it seems like we are either going to stay in our lane and continue to operate the way that we have been, with a sense of fear of like we can study everything else, and we can try and understand Vex technology and the mind forking that Future War Cult is doing. We can try and understand more about the Fallen or about the Cabal, but at the end of the day, they are our enemy. We should destroy them, and we should stop at nothing to make sure that we are the only ones left standing. Versus this new kind of thinking that seems to be spreading. It started with the Crow, and it seems to be spreading, is that we should make them our allies. And maybe, we will see the fall of the Vanguard. We've been talking about it for a while. There's no more reason for a speaker because the Traveler now speaks to us directly. We have had interactions with the Traveler. Crow has had interactions with the Traveler. But then the Vanguard itself seems to be outliving its purpose. The Vanguard's responsibility now is more the protection of the city, which is what Lakshmi wants. Just the protection of the city and all of the citizens under it. The real goal of Vanguard now is the protection of the system, the protection of the world, of the universe from the darkness, this ever encroaching force that is able to just wipe planets off the map and enact changes that are irreversible. We still don't know what happened to we still don't know what happened to Callus. We have no clue what the darkness's true power is. We only know what the darkness allows us to see, and it sees itself as being our salvation. So I'm just very excited about where we have set things up to be at the end of next season. We've been talking about it a lot, and how this year, especially, Bungie's storytelling has gone up a notch to where I no longer feel like I have to log into the game to get weapons or to do anything like that. Like the year, like Shadowkeep, I felt like I had to log in every week or else I was going to lose out. I was going to miss something. They've taken a really good approach to this. I am not worried about missing any items or missing any playlist stuff or not getting a seal or anything like that. The reason why I've been logging in every week and playing every week is so that I can at the very least, if I do nothing else that week, engage with the story and see where they're taking it. Because all of the things that we talked about when we first started this episode or this podcast about how we hope they would show us more inside the game itself, and we hope that they would do so much more story in front of us so that we don't have to read the lore to figure out what happened. Like, they're actually doing that now. And so you got to give it applause. You got to give a round of applause, because this is possibly one of the best seasons, capping off one of the best years that we've had. And it's all because for the first time in Destiny's long history, every player that's logging on every week seems to be just as excited about the story as we are. And that is dope.
That's right. That's right. It's extremely dope.
Yeah.
I don't know what else to say.
I know. I was like, I kind of went for a bit there. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I kind of went.
You covered it all. The story is absolutely amazing right now. This is the best time. Yeah. And, they've done a really good job implementing the fact that you don't have to play 10 hours plus every week to get the story.
Thank God.
The weekly story missions, if you hop in and you do your Season of the Splicer weekly mission, I would say you could probably do them all in like an hour. It's literally
I've done it.
Talk to your characters, do the override mission, do the expunge mission, talk to characters at the end, and you're done.
Yep, that's it.
That's it.
Takes nothing more than an hour of your time a week to just engage, and we've reached that sad point of the season, where like I have, as my air conditioner kicks back on, we've reached that sad point in the season where unfortunately, the season's over. I don't think there's going to be any more story that we are going to get this season. They kind of capped it. Like it reached a point. We got all the triumphs, you know? And so we have a whole month-ish, give or take, of the season left. We're going to be doing Solstice of Heroes, and we could talk about that or whatever, but it is also exciting time because we get to kind of sit back and really digest the stuff that we learned and really go over these lore books that we're just starting to finally be able to finish if you didn't cheat and data mine, you know? But yeah, I'm curious about that. You know what? We haven't talked about this topic, but I'm genuinely curious if you were aware of the controversy, and then if so, what your thoughts are. Were you in tune with the data mining controversy that was going on with the Destiny community, specifically with an emblem? I'm not going to give it away if you don't know it.
No. I am doing the best
You
I
missed
can.
that then.
I'm doing the best I can to keep my eyes shut, so everything is a surprise to me. But
Okay.
you know, just obviously I follow Destiny everything, so I get some highlights or um, some spoilers have been crossed my eyes, but I try not to. I try to
Yeah.
act like I don't see them. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm curious,
But
you know, because like
I've heard there's a lot going on.
there is. So I'm not going to get into it too much because I also don't want to give away what it is in the event that you actually don't know. Like I want this to be a special thing for you. I got it ruined. Because I was curious what everyone was yelling about with data miners. Over the last month or so, you really have noticed that a lot of people have taken into account or you know, like taken people who data mine the game to and been a little bit more upset with him because they've just been freely giving away information that if you're not paying attention, you'll have something spoiled for you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, for those of you that don't know what data mining is, the code for the game is pretty much already written whenever they release the new season, the new patch or whatever. It's all there. So what will happen is that some very intelligent people who understand the code and the way that the system is built will take a look at it and kind of break down what all we're getting story-wise, everything that's happening. All of the lore books are readable from day one once that patch goes in. You can see all the weapons. You can see literally everything that the game is going to do. And typically in the past, the way that it's worked is like, hey, like there's this hidden thing here. Like this is in the code, but no one's seen it. No one like blah, blah, blah. And it was cool because you can kind of like try and like find secrets and that's where it's all about is that, you know, Destiny used to have a whole bunch of secrets in the game. So if you data mine for the secrets, maybe you can find a clue to help get, you know, for example, with the release of Warmind, it ended up being the physical location of a geocache, which held a real life like javelin. So the problem is recently, again, there's been no spoiler warnings. There's been no, hey, as a heads up, if you continue down this path, things will be spoiled for you. And what ended up happening is that Bungie themselves came out and made a statement about a specific emblem that will be coming out in the game in the next few months. It's a celebration for players who have been playing. It is a great emblem. But they were upset because they're like, what really sucks is that we spend all of this time doing all of this hard work and we create these things just to be like special gifts to the players, and then people get greedy in their minds and mine for the data and release that information before the developer was ready for it. You know, like instead of it being a surprise, the surprise is now ruined and everybody knows at XYZ time to look for this thing to be released.
Right.
So yeah, that's the controversy in a nutshell. I'm curious what your thoughts are because, you know, we deal with lore, unfortunately. And sometimes one of the hardest things is not reading ahead. You know, if you go to the Ishtar Collective, if you go to some of these other lore sites online, the lore is already published. The lore is already there. And so the adventure, the fun of unlocking new lore books, new lore pages, you know, every week and seeing what new information can be gleaned from it kind of goes out the window when you can read the entire lore book in a single sitting, you know? And I'm curious again. I'm curious what your thoughts are, because we're in this weird position where it really helps to know the lore and to know where we're going, so that we can see things that happen week to week and be like, oh, this is why this is significant. So I'm curious what your thoughts are.
I don't think that's really fair to start off. I don't think that it's really fair to the developers to have for the data miners to leak everything like that, and
Yeah.
especially to do it in I would say, an irresponsible manner. Like
Yeah.
you said, first of all, not putting spoiler warnings for the fans, not making it something that is harder to reach, where only like the true avid fans can find it. Like, it's to the point where if you're just following just a couple Destiny pages on your local social media, it's possible that you're going to have one of these leaks, presented just as you're scrolling along. You didn't even want to see it, but now you've been exposed and you know what's going on. That's not really fair to the developers. That's not really fair to the players. That's not really fair to some lore enthusiasts. For example, myself, I know that there's the option of reading ahead. I choose not to. Why? Because it's just, just about, when you're watching a movie, you don't want to spoil what's going to happen. You want to experience it as it happens. I enjoy that, especially if it's, say, for example, a lore chapter that you just unlocked by doing the weekly activity. I think that has more resonance with what you're doing. It's more relevant with the mission that you just, finished and related. Whereas if you're reading ahead, okay, you know what's going to happen, but you might not know the exact context of what happens in game. It's kind of confusing exactly where to keep up. For a podcaster's perspective, for both of us, I think it would just be a little confusing on what exactly do you report on? Where do you draw the line on things that have just occurred in game, or do we want to talk about things that we know are going to happen in the future? But then that creates the same issue that we're talking about with our listeners. Do they want to listen and find out what's happening, or do they want to just go ahead and tune out here and just hope they can come back next week and we didn't? Please, I appreciate y'all for sticking through. This is an example, y'all. We're good. But, that's my point exactly. It just creates this kind of moral question of how do you want to respond to that? And even if you read ahead, you know that this is technically stolen information, and the devs get nothing from it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know.
I was curious, because I also understand like some other people's perspectives. Like, if you're a journalist, or if this is the game that you cover and you're like trying to break into journalism, like you, unfortunately, you're in a kind of shitty spot where you have to pay attention to these things, because if you're like Paul Tassi, right, and you're writing 5 articles a week at least about the goings on in Destiny, well, there's not that much actually going on in Destiny. He has a refresh that he writes every week, but then that's 4 other days of content that he needs to fill. So if you're going to talk about something, you need to talk about what's going on in the game and what's going on in the community at large.
That's right.
And if it's something like this, which ended up blowing up just because the developers, actually made a statement on it, you're stuck. Like, Yeah. But yeah, I was curious. Like, I try to do my best to not read ahead as much anymore. Sometimes you can, like reading Achilles Weaves a Cocoon. I feel like that's a lore book you can read ahead with, because the things that are happening there are happening in the past, versus the lore book that was dealing specifically with the Endless Night, that was telling us week by week what was happening. I think that, like, ruining that for yourself is kind of where you draw the line.
Absolutely.
But,
I mean, you said it yourself.
I understand.
With that specific lore tab in the Dreaming Night, about Savathuun being in our city. Imagine if we had found that out week 1 of the season. That would ruin everything. Then everything in between week 1 and week 7 would just be in anticipation of that moment. It wouldn't exactly be the same. So it really just depends, I suppose, on your position. If you're the consumer of Destiny, or if you are, a reporter, if you do this professionally, or even as a hobby. It just depends on your position. If you're the consumer and you really enjoy and love this game, you may choose not to read ahead. But at the end of the day, the choice is yours to make. Just be aware that if you do choose to read ahead, you may come across some things that you're not ready to to understand or to accept. It could be some crazy plot twist. And because you don't have the context of the gameplay, it might not resonate the same way as it would have if you experienced it, just by playing the game.
Yeah, like because some of the stuff, perfect example, some of the stuff that Osiris is doing has been sus, but it's not really talked about in the lore as much about how he's really weirdly suspicious. It isn't until you play the game and you hear those voice lines inside the expunge missions, or you hear Ikora talk about how she is handing over the files of all of her hidden agents.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Anyways, yeah. So those things don't make sense in context without knowing what's actually happening in game.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I was curious. I saw it as a controversy, as we try and cover more topics related to the Destiny community at large. I figured that was a good one to get started with.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up. Even in that little conversation, I was really glad that you mentioned the XTweeziix Cocoon lore book. I did want to mention that myself before the end of the episode. As far as the lore chapters that you read, I found XTweeziix Cocoon to be probably my favorite, and because it gives you just another example, as you stated earlier. As everybody saw the video where they showed that Saint 14 was our version of the monster. In XTweeziix Cocoon, there's 2 chapters back to back that portray how kind of crazy and destructive Guardians can be, and how we lock into killing all of our enemies without even trying to understand who they are, why they're there. If a Guardian comes upon a random group of Fallen just out in the field somewhere, instinct 1, kill them all. See if they have any good loot on them. Don't even,
Guilty.
They might be, see, exactly. They might be House Light members. They might be fleeing some other Fallen enemy. Who knows what's going on? They might not be so evil as you initially think them to be. But because the Guardians are the way they are, we just are so destructive that we have caused fear in a species who used to be more powerful than us, who used to be just like us. They now fear us. And it's just interesting to read that from the perspective of a fallen, I would say, a warlord. If you're familiar with the story of the Guardian warlords, it's very similar. You have I would say this man, I believe his name's Namrask. Sorry, this Elixni man is the equivalent of a Elixni warlord, and he has to deal with the repercussions of his actions while also trying to accept the fact that the Elixni are now living with the Guardians. And, what is that like? The same things that our Guardians, that Saladin and Osiris were discussing last season. How do you accept the Cabal? How do you accept the species that you've been at war with for centuries? But it was a very good read. And, I'm really looking forward to more stories like that. And the fact that they're even telling similar stories in game whenever you go to the new Elixni City and talk with Mithrax. But yeah, that was probably my favorite part of this. One of my favorite parts of the season.
Oh well, I mean, mine's a lot less than that. Mine's Chroma Rush. I'm not gonna lie.
Yes, Chroma Rush
gun.
is OP. Yeah. I actually just did my first Grandmaster Nightfall earlier today with my Chroma Rush, and that allowed me to get a Adept Hung Jury. But I still think that I like my Chroma Rush more.
I mean, get a better Chroma Rush is great. I'm not gonna lie.
That's a really good auto rifle, y'all. Like that's the gun of the season for me.
Yeah. So there's always one great weapon that just happens to be this one. So. Oh well. Looking forward to the future. I mean, we have Solstice of Heroes, which we can talk about the historical significance of that at a later date.
Yeah, we don't have to talk about that. That's fine.
I mean, it's Solstice of Heroes. Like, oh wow. Yeah.
But one thing coming with Solstice of Heroes, to my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, is we're getting some of the Shadowkeep weapons back with new roles. To be understood?
I think so. What unfortunately,
because if I can get my arc
unfortunately, sunsetting was not the greatest decision. In just the way that it really reduced the diversity in the game with the gunplay. Destiny is more than like space magic and stuff like that. It's a game about gunplay. When you reduce the weapon pools by so much, it's ridiculous. Especially considering specifically with the Shadowkeep stuff. Shadowkeep was a very recent expansion. It was the last expansion. Then you were telling me, hey, I played this game for a year, and all of the weapons that I earned in this game by doing this expansion are now worthless. Like, they don't matter. So I don't need to, because that's why you saw like a lot of people were complaining once they started rolling back sunsetting. Hey, like, there's no reason to run the well, like the blind well in the Dreaming City. There's no reason to do that. There is no reasons to do any of the stuff on the moon, because you're going to get weapons that are going to be sunset from the moment you earned them.
Mm-hmm. No
so
matter how cool they look.
Yeah. And so I think it's just like them slowly rolling it back and trying to back more of the weapons and being like, like, that's our bad. Like, we didn't really mean to screw this up that badly. Because, yeah, man, there's nothing like, you have to go to the moon every now and then to do something. If anything, just to check it out and be like, oh, it's a planet. I remember when we used to come here specifically. And, there's nothing to do. There's nobody on the planet because everybody's already done a lot of everything else. So with no reason to run any of those activities, whose name I can't remember right now. Altars of Sorrow. There it goes. Like, the moment that I say that I can't remember, it used to be when Shadowkeep released, like, you could find the solid 6 guys, to just kind of run through that and to make it to at least, tier 5. And these days, like, you're lucky to find 3.
Yep.
Unless it is you coordinate something with somebody. So I'm excited for this. I hope that this brings back the moon as more of a viable event space, like somewhere that we can go back to because we want to go back to it, and because the weapons are going to be, we're going to be able to search for better rolls of weapons and better perks on these things and really fine tune our arsenal to what we want it to be. Because, yeah, man, it sucks. Like, it was a whole planet worth of gear that's just,
That's right. You're literally right. I mean, nowadays, me personally, I only go to the moon if I need to do a lost sector or if I need to knock out some bounties. That's it.
Yeah.
And that only takes, 30 minutes, an hour tops. And,
yeah, that's really it.
Then I'm out.
Yeah.
So I am looking forward to going back to the moon as well. Some of those weapons were amazing. Like I stated earlier, I personally will be grinding for a great roll of arc logic. Like, that was my auto rifle. And then to give me that with Chroma Rush, as we just stated before, I'll double auto rifle all day. Like, I have no problems with that. Because you can do that. You can have a connect auto rifle as well as an energy auto rifle. Then you can put a machine gun on the bottom, and man, you're just unstoppable.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping for. Anyways, just something, man. Just like make the moon worth going to again. There's so much great story at the moon. There's so much stuff for people to do. It was such a vast and expansive place. Like, just let me go back. Yeah. Let me go back and run something stupid. That's it. That's all I can ask for.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh well.
Let's see. Do we have any other topics that you wanted to talk about before the end of today?
Solstice of Heroes is coming now that Iron Banner is up.
That's right.
I did not do any Iron Banner because it's just not fun.
It was not fun.
No, I have nothing really to talk about. I would love to talk about Iron Banner, but it's to run, so I just don't do it anymore. Eventually I will, because I think I need to get that quest done, but we still have a month left. There will be another one, and I'll just grind it out then. But yeah, past that, man, I've kind of been looking forward to Solstice of Heroes. I'm excited to see what they're going to do. I think we're getting the EAZ. We're going to do some fun stuff. But really what excites me is being able to really upgrade that armor and hopefully grind out to get the legendary, Solstice of Heroes armors.
Yeah. Yeah, the armor does look pretty
triumphs.
good this year. I still have my armor from last year, so I'm going to start off with that.
And I'm hoping that they're gonna have some stupid stuff in there too, because we saw their poll months ago about the different potential armor sets that people could unlock for the Halloween event. And so I'm like, all right, well, like if you're gonna do that for Halloween, like what are you gonna do for Solstice? Like, come on, there's got to be something good. You just do something fun, guys.
Yeah.
So, but we'll see. Again, it starts recording this on Monday, so it starts tomorrow. We'll get a better idea then.
Mm-hmm. Get a better idea then, and then report back in 2 weeks for episode 15.
Heck yeah, man. Heck yeah.
Want to take a minute to just thank you all listeners and viewers again for coming through and paying attention to our podcast, learning a little bit about Quria. I hope we gave you some good information there. Hope we explained Season of the Splicer proficiently, gave you our opinions, talked a little bit about where the story is going, and now we're just at that period at the end of every season where you just knock out whatever it is you're grinding for. If you want to get that seal, go for it. If you want to try to get those Grandmasters, hit me up. I'll do it. PSN Birduuup. But seriously, y'all, just thank you. We'll see you next week. And y'all stay great out there. Supposedly the sun is coming back. We killed Quria, so the sun's coming back tomorrow. No more darkness. Enjoy. And we'll see y'all in 2 weeks.
Yeah. Later, y'all.
Bye.